Buonasera a tutti. Good evening and welcome to the Italian Radio Hour. Io sono Viviana and I would like to welcome back our regular listeners and also welcome any new listeners. Also, be sure to like us on Instagram and Facebook at Italian Radio Hour and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch up on any past interviews. Vorrei dare il benvenuto ai nostri ascoltatori da tutto il mondo. Grazie per essere con noi anche oggi mentre continuiamo il nostro viaggio per l'Italia e la cultura italiana. Well, today we're not traveling to Italy, but we're actually going to find a little bit of Italy in the state of Vermont. Today with us, we'll have Lisa De Natale, who is also the president of the VICA, Vermont Italian Cultural Association, who will tell us where to find some Italianness in her beautiful green state. But before that, a little pubblicità. Parli italiano? Do you want to learn, improve, or master your Italian? L'Istituto Mondo Italiano can help. Located in the heart of Regent Square, Mondo Italiano offers small group classes and one-on-one private tutoring to help you learn Italian in no time. Visit us online at www.istitutomondoitaliano.org. Un caffè, per favore. My first cup of coffee sets the tone for my entire day, and I get my coffee at La Prima Espresso. La Prima has been brewing Pittsburgh Express coffee for nearly 35 years. Try any of their in-house roasted varieties of beans from all over the world at home, or come and enjoy an espresso or a cappuccino at any of their locations, where their friendly baristas and familiar faces will make you feel at home. Because a trip to La Prima is like a trip to Italy, only closer to home. Well, benvenuta to the program, Lisa. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you very much, Viviana. How are you?
I'm doing very well as well. I'm so excited to have you because I'll tell you what's my little connection to Vermont, and I'm sure we do have a mutual acquaintance. But last year, we had Alessandra Rellini as a guest with us, and she's the owner and founder of Agricola farm in Panton, or wonderful Salumi from her kind of business Monteverdi. And by digging through some of the information about how Italian is Vermont, obviously I came across your profile and also the organization that you are the president of. So today we will dive into the Italian side of Vermont, thanks to you. Mm-hmm. And as usual, I would like to start always with a little bit of background about you, your family, who came first, from where, and to where.
Sure. So I was raised outside of Boston, obviously a very large Italian community in the Boston area. And my grandparents, Salvatore Natale and his wife, soon-to-be wife, Maria Trippi, came from a very small village in the central part of Sicily, Pietraperzia, which is near Caltanissetta, near Enna. And they came and settled in Boston and raised a family of 6. And my father was their firstborn son, mm-hmm. named Giuseppe Salvatore Di Natale. At that point, it had morphed to D.I. Natale.
I was going to ask you because I see Di Natale in your last name. They were Di Natale and originally was simply Natale, right?
That's right. Yes, it changed 3 times in the course of my grandfather's life. As often names did change, mm-hmm. for sure. And so I was... I'm also half Albanian, so I had sort of my Sicilian side and my Albanian side very strong, both strong immigrant stories. And clearly, like many Italian families, we were lived close to our grandparents, and we spent many celebrations and name days and Easter and et cetera, all reasons to gather on the table, and just very, very strong memories. And although my father did not speak Italian in the home, I always like to say he did use Italian, but mostly in the imperative. Eat, hurry up.
Some commands.
Subito, lasciala, all those expressions I remember quite clearly. But he did have a great pride and appreciation in his Sicilian heritage and in the culture. Mm-hmm. And he instilled that in his family. And I have always appreciated it. I've traveled to Italy at least 35 times. I have family there, so I find that I am very drawn to my Sicilian heritage and Italian culture.
Do you remember maybe the impressions of your first trip to Italy? Did you find that it was completely different from the Italianness that you were experiencing, or maybe you recognize, I don't know, the names of places, last names that were common? Because, you know, sometimes, although, yeah, we have often the migration of different family nuclei to the same town. So at some point in the US, you recognize the same last names of the town was left behind. So I was wondering if that was the case.
Sure. Yeah, well, the first time I went to Italy was like I was in college, and like many young people, I went to Florence, Venice, and Rome. But my first trip to Sicily was just as you described it. It was as though, you know, at the roadsides were all the surnames of children, people I grew up with, you know, Mondello and names, Siracusa, you know, names like that. So that really struck me as how closely tied I was, not just myself, but my youth was tied to Sicily, not even realizing it. And then the first time I went to Piazza, I saw our name on, you know, in different businesses. So of course, and in the cemetery. So of course, I felt more and more drawn and closer to my roots at that point.
Did the Italian play any influence in your professional life, or is it just your heritage?
Looking back, I wish it had played more. I studied Italian for 2 semesters when I was an undergraduate, and but I was a business major, and at that time they really were not encouraging you to study as a second language, so I dropped it. But I was fortunate. I traveled to Italy on business and was able to maintain a very strong connection. And certainly now in retirement, I found my way back.
So now, obviously, you hold the position of the president of the Vermont Italian Cultural Association. Tell us a little bit about the association, because you just celebrated your 40th anniversary with with a beautiful gala. So I want to hear all about it.
Sure. So yes, we celebrated our 40th anniversary, and the Vermont Italian Cultural Association was actually started by a number of people who moved to Vermont from Philadelphia, from Italy, from Boston, who wanted to continue the traditions and that sense of community that they had in their hometowns or in their cities. So they started it just as a small group of people gathering in a living room, and it continued to grow over time. More and more activities were planned, and celebrations, Carnevale, etc., were celebrated. And now, 40 years later, we have over 400 members. We have activities year-round. We did just celebrate a lovely gala, which was also a fundraiser for our scholarships and grants program. So a really rich community that, interestingly, when I moved here, I never realized the history of Italian immigrants in Vermont. And that's been sort of the joyful part of this role, is discovering how much, how many Italian immigrants came here and how much they influenced the culture here in Vermont.
Well, actually, take us back to indeed some of the things that how can we trace back some of the Italianness in Vermont? What are the cities not to be missed? And obviously, it will come out for also the cemetery, which is in Bar is a work of art to get a glimpse of some of the stone carvers work. So tell us a little bit about, did you notice that there was a prevalence of people coming originally from a certain region or representing certain professions, or a little bit of everything?
Sure. So there were really three areas, I would say, in Vermont where the immigrant story is probably the strongest. So Barre, which is the one you mentioned, many Italian immigrants came from the north and also from northern Tuscany because they were skilled stonecutters. And so in Barre, there is a very large granite quarry. So the stonecutters came not just from Italy, but from Scotland and other areas, but primarily Italy, and established a very, very strong community there. I think at one point in the early 20th century, I think there were close to 20% of the population were Italians. And so when you walk through Hope Cemetery, which is really as much a museum as anything else, is really a testament to the skills of those stonecutters. There are not only their own gravestones and gravestones of their family members, but those that they carved for other prominent people in the community. It's really a lovely, as I said, a museum, really, because of the skilled craftsmanship of the stonecutters. And so we actually took a tour last week when the Consul General was here with, God, scared, his name's escaping me, but he's one of the few remaining stonecutters who was born in Italy. And he was really quite clear about the level of skill that the Italian immigrants had that is really beginning to disappear. We don't see it quite as strongly now in some of the monuments that are being built today. But so the Italian immigrants were a very, very strong influence in Barre, continue to be, and established a labor hall through their efforts to unionize as stonecutters. And I think if you go to Barre, you'll certainly see just what remains and how the Italian culture is still quite vibrant down there. Another area is just outside of Rutland, which is farther south, in an area called Proctor, where there are marble quarries. So there again, Italian immigrants were attracted to that area and were in some ways sort of softly recruited because they needed skilled stonecutters in that area. So much like Barre, Proctor is a testament to the skills of the stonecutters who came there.
I'm going to show a couple of images of the cemetery.
Oh, sure.
Obviously, this being one of the very recognizable.
He was one of the, he owned, Eliac Corti owned one of the manufacturing. They did quite a bit of the, so yes, it's really, the first time I went there, I honestly felt like I was walking through a cemetery in Italy because many of the stones are engraved in Italian. Certainly the names are all many Italian surnames. So the last area is Burlington, and Burlington too had a very, very strong Italian community. Many came here to work on the railroads and in the lumber yards when Burlington was very industrial. And then they became fruit merchants or peddlers, and then they opened shops. And of course, as the story goes, you know, they prospered and they had very successful restaurants. And Italian was the language that most people heard in this particular neighborhood in Burlington. And to this day, there are plaques that commemorate Little Italy, with some things remaining. Unfortunately, urban renewal in the 60s destroyed a lot of that part of the city. But there are still certainly some examples of the contributions that Italian immigrants made in Burlington. So we really do have three distinct pockets, but as Vermont is a really attractive state to live in, a lot of our values with Italy are quite similar. So you mentioned Alessandra Rellini at Agricola. There are other small businesses, diversified farms that are also run by native Italians or American-born Italians who really want to continue the focus on local production, sustainable farming, all of the things that are quite important in Italy as well. We were one of the very first slow food.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you received actually the visit
chapters.
of Carlo Petrini, right?
Yes, that's
a
right.
few years ago.
Yeah, there's a slow food movement here in Vermont. So that's also quite strong. So, you know, in addition to just the physical similarities between Vermont and Italy, there's also the values part, I think, are very similar between Vermont and Italy. And I think that that's what we are able to tap into here with the Vermont Italian Cultural Association.
Indeed, and then you really came up with this wonderful slogan of Discover Italy in Vermont, because if you sum up all these experiences and places that people can go, and again, a common philosophy, you can definitely recognize those. Now, do you have also Italian festivals or certain holidays that are felt more or celebrated?
Yeah, we have not had a festival, and actually the board of directors, we talked about it, and I think we're all volunteers, so we don't. I think we became
a lot of work
to put on a festival. Fortunately, we're close to Boston and we're close to Montreal. Both cities have quite large festivals throughout the summer season. So we have in the past organized trips to those cities to celebrate the festivals, but we do not have one here. I do know prior to my becoming more involved, Carnevale was always celebrated. We do have we have a picnic every summer for our community. So we do try to have annual events, and then also celebrate those events that are important in Italy and find ways to acknowledge them here.
So going back to your recent gala, which you can describe to us, but you also had you were honored with the presence of, if I get Arnaldo Minuti, the Consul General of Boston, along with the Director of Education, Ivana Marroncelli. Tell us a little bit about how the visit was structured, and also are you aware of is Italian taught in any schools in your area, except for cultural centers? But I was wondering if there are schools that do offer Italian.
Sure. So we called it the Discover Italy in Vermont tour. when we
I will want to book a ticket on that.
we just keep hammering on that tagline. But really, it was an opportunity to introduce Vermont to Arnaldo and Ivana and share with them some of the things that I've told you, but also to meet some of the people who are promoting Italian culture and Italian language here. So our first stop was at Middlebury College, which is a small private college in Middlebury, where they have a very strong Italian language program. So we met with the faculty there and spoke with them and had lunch and had a tour of the campus. From there, we went to Agricola, and we had we met with Alessandra and Stefano and toured the farm and tasted their salumi and had a nice visit there. So that was another layer of the discovering Italy. We then went to Shelburne Farms, which is a very large nonprofit here, which promotes, among other things, sustainable agriculture. And they have had a partnership in the past with Spinocchia Farm in Tuscany. And so we were able to talk with their director of education about some of the exchange programs that they have designed. And we're exploring that as an opportunity between Italy and Vermont through more of a sustainable agriculture, farming kind of angle. And then we had a tour of Little Italy as part of the visit. We went to Barry, to Hope Cemetery, went to the quarries. And of course, as you mentioned, we had our gala celebration, which was quite an event. We had about 170 people. We raised over $8,000 for our scholarships and grants program. And to have Arnaldo and Ivana there to meet with our Italian community, meet with educators, and begin to have conversations about how do we bring more Italian language, to your question, into the schools, because right now there is no Italian through high school.
Lower levels.
You can certainly take Italian up at the University of Vermont or Middlebury or Dartmouth, which is not that far. But so we're beginning to explore what that might look like, and is there a way to create a language program that may not necessarily be in the high school or the junior high school, but is there another way to do that? So we do have a lot of Italian language groups and conversation sessions, that we offer, but nothing structured in the schools as they do in Massachusetts and some other areas.
And how about, tell me a little bit about the two young men that were awarded the scholarship, Nick and Sam.
Yes. Oh, well, actually, yes. So Sam is actually a young woman, Samantha.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all right. That's all right. So Nick Tocci won a scholarship because he attended a 2-week intensive opera program last year in Tuscany. And so he performed with one of his co-workers. They run Barn Opera, which is an opera company here in southern Vermont, or actually not that far south, but near Middlebury. And so it was just a wonderful performance. To have live opera performed was really a treat. And so that was one. He was one of the recipients, and that our other recipient was a young woman, Samantha Aikman, who did a 2-week solo trip to Italy last summer and wrote a poem and created a spoken poem and video, which is actually on our website, which is really quite remarkable. It was wonderful to sort of travel with her, on her first trip to Italy, and that sense of discovery, that not only you discover because you're in another country, but you discover things about yourself. So she did a really lovely job of kind of capturing that emotion, and of course the beauty of Italy as well.
Indeed. So, and also for with the VICA, you put out a very nice newsletter, Il Messaggio, and it contains a lot of interesting, information about what is happening, what is coming up, but also a couple of articles. I think there was one about progressive, or make it progressive.
Yes.
Yourself, and
yes, one of our members is the granddaughter, I guess, great-granddaughter of one of the Progresso founders. So she was able to tell that story and her memories of growing up and working in the plant outside of, I think it was in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we actually, I guess that's sort of the Discover Italy and Vermont thing that I keep going back to, is that people have such wonderful stories to tell, and because of their because of their Italian heritage, and we only discover them when we stop and talk and ask questions and listen. And that again is the wonderful part of our of our community. In fact, as we were touring Hope Cemetery last week with one of our members, he took us to the grave site of Lou Polly, who, come to find out, was the first Italian born to play in the major leagues in baseball. And so he was born in Italy, spent most of his life in Barrie, played professional baseball with the likes of Babe Ruth, but has been recognized as the first Italian born. So we'll be celebrating Lou Polly night, I think, later this summer. So it's those things that you don't hear about until you have a short conversation with somebody.
Indeed. So just to conclude our beautiful conversation, I do encourage everyone to come and visit Vermont. It's a beautiful state to begin with. So I always come back with despite the mileage from Pittsburgh, and we did it just right. We were on a mission. So how can people follow what VICA is doing or get information on the latest events?
Sure. Yeah. So of course, our website, Vermont Italian Cultural Association.org, and our Facebook page. I became president 2 years ago, which was right in the middle of COVID. And up until that point, we always did all of our activities in person. And so we've really been, we benefited from Zoom and being able to hold events where if you don't live in Vermont, you can certainly still participate. So we've had opera lectures, we've had book readings from all sorts of authors. We also do twice a year, we do an Italian citizenship presentation for those people who are pursuing their Italian citizenship. So you don't need to be in Vermont really to participate in many of those Zoom activities. And those are always posted on our website or can be found on our Facebook page.
Which is beautiful. Talking about citizenship, I remember reading that you were in the process of applying, and all those name changes probably might have required some corrections or court orders, or maybe there were. Have you had your appointment, or is it going to? Because a lot of our students and customers got their appointments obviously rescheduled because of COVID. And so I was wondering if you have had your big day or appointment or not yet.
Yes, yes, I have had my big day, and I am an Italian citizen now.
Congratulations.
So. Yes, thank you. March 23rd, I went and got my passport. It was really an emotional moment for me. It had been 4.5 years. I know there are many people who have, it's taken quite some time because COVID really did slow things down for sure. And I know for some people, even though I had 3 name changes or spelling changes, it was easier to trace than I know for a lot of people who really just have a hard time even finding what their original surname was. So, but yeah, it was just a wonderful, and I'm leaving for Italy in a couple of weeks, and I'll be traveling with my Italian passport. So
I was going to say, how long can you, are you going to visit some family? You're doing some exploring?
I am actually going to learn Italian. I'm doing a homestay program.
Wonderful.
So I will live with an Italian teacher. So just continuing to learn Italian, I guess. So I'll be doing that, and then some time at the sea. So okay. I'll always do that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, with this buon viaggio wish for you, we have come to the end of our nice conversation about discovering Italy in Vermont. And so il Big Ben ha detto stop. It's time for us to say arrivederci e alla prossima. We want to thank you for tuning in into the program. If you have any questions or comments, or if you have any topics you would like to address, please contact us at the Italian Radio Hour italia.radio@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And remember, if you or any of your family and friends have missed a prior episode or would like to listen to this episode again, please visit our website at www.istitutomondoitaliano.org and click on the Italian Radio Hour tab. You can also subscribe to the Italian Radio Hour on YouTube or where you catch your favorite podcasts. I would like to thank my guest, Lisa De Natale, and again, buon viaggio. Our sponsors, Istituto Mondo Italiano, La Prima Espresso, and Alla Boara for the music. Until next time, alla prossima. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.